Hey guys, just a reminder that tonight you have your one pager due at 11:59. In addition to that, you will also have a couple worksheet pages to complete. It shouldn't be too hard as we are segueing into the beginning of the Great Depression. Um, let's take a look. So the Great Depression begins. This begins on page 668 in your textbook. If you wanted to follow along with your textbook, um, your textbook offers a timeline on this page if you kind of wanted to keep track as we move along. So the Great Depression is an economic crisis that grips the nation. Um, President Herbert Hoover's conservative response to the nation's problem cost him many supporters. The main idea, so for the nation's sick economy, right, the main idea is that as the 1920s, the prosperous, age of the flapper, women's rights, this idea that the economy will always be booming and that the US is invincible. This kind of comes to an end. And then we start to see severe economic problems take hold of the decade, and the roaring 20s come to an end. Okay. Prosperity is made up of three different key components. So the government's role, right? So they had a laissez-faire economic approach where there was minimal interference with business. They cut government spending and debt, eliminated or reduced taxes and high tariffs. So basically, this is a conservative form of government. We're not going to spend a lot on the people, right? The less money the government spends, the less money the government spends on its people. Government is not really interfering with business. Taxes are brought down, and like I said, as taxes are being brought down, the people benefit less from services provided by the government. Business innovation. So mass production reduces prices, right? As factories start popping up all over the Northeast area, as different technology is being innovated to make products faster, we will see that prices are going down and that production is going up. Cars, airplanes, and radios are leading to new industries. And these new consumer goods are fueling a manufacturing boom. People have a more disposable income. They have more leisure time with the invention of the car and the airplane. People can get around faster and explore more. Credit is easily available. And we see, a boom in mass advertising. So if you look here, right, economic troubles on the horizon, we're going to see that some industries are in trouble. These industries include the railroad, textiles, steel. These industries are barely making a profit at this point. Mining and lumbering expand during the war, and they're no longer in high demand. So the war's over. Everybody's coming back. There's not really a need for so many workers to be working in mining and lumbering. And everybody's coming home and everybody needs a job, and these jobs are not available. Coal was especially hard hit due to the availability of new energy sources, right? So they don't need coal as much. They're looking at other sources for energy. And so that industry is going to plummet. And we're going to see the booming of industries like automobiles, construction, and consumer goods. At first, the demand for these industries was very high, but as everyone's coming home from the war, and there's no longer a need to produce, to rapidly produce certain goods, we're going to see a decline there too. Housing also starts to decline. Okay, so this is real national product in the Great Depression. Okay. Farmers need a lift. We learned last chapter that farmers were struggling. There's an international demand for U.S. grain, but this declines after the war. And prices drop by 40% or more because it's no longer a hot commodity. People aren't going to pay a lot of money to consume these goods, and also they don't need as much. The farmers boost production so that they can sell more and the prices drop further. Farm income declines and farmers are to fall on loans. Rural banks fail. The government buys surplus crops and guarantees the prices, but Coolidge vetoed this price support bill. Consumers are having less money to spend, and this can cripple the economy because as people have less money to spend, they're not going to go out and buy from these stores that need their support to stay in business. People are buying less due to the rising prices, right? Because as price goes up, demand goes down. Do you remember that last year from econ? Um, you have stagnant wages and credit debts. People are not making any more money, and the cost of living is skyrocketing. And so we're going to see struggle here. People are buying goods on credit. Buy it now, pay later. And businesses give easy credit, and consumers pile up large debts that they can't pay off. They're not making any more money. In fact, no one's making more money, but the cost of living is going up. And so they're trying to pay off their debts, and they're cutting back on spending. Again, this stagnates the economy. So here's a little clip. So in 1900, not one family in 100 owned a horse and buggy. Today, 3 out of 4 have cars. One family in 13 have a telephone, and now one family in 2. In 1900, modern plumbing and central heating were luxuries. Less than 500,000 homes had electricity. Radio and electric refrigeration were unknown. Whereas today, 21 million homes are wired, 7 million families own electric refrigerators, and 22 million have radio receivers. This is kind of just showing us how the statistics changed over a 30-year period. That is rapid expansion, rapid growth, and that's why, people in the United States thought that they didn't think that this boom could end. They just thought this was how the United States was going to be. There's an uneven distribution of income, and this is what we see as one of the major flaws of capitalism. In the 1920s, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. 70% of families earn less than minimum for a decent standard of living, and most can't afford the flood of products that factories produce. And this chart over here, this pie chart, is kind of showing us the 1% of the United States population and how they own most of the wealth. Okay. If you look, okay, over 60% of the population owns less than 5% of the nation's wealth, to put things in perspective. Gee, Mom, were they all poor people? Not exactly poor, Bobby. They had money, but they didn't have all of the nice things that we have, like a radio, electric lights, vacuum cleaner. Okay, so this picture is taking a look at, one of the advertisements that were put out during this time. So we're looking at the election of 1928. We have Democrat Alfred E. Smith going up against Republican Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover wins in a landslide, right? Yeah, buddy. Many engage in speculation. This is a buy on chance of a quick profit, and they're buying on margin. We looked at this last chapter where they pay a small percent of the price and they borrow the rest. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tracks state of the stock market. And in the 1920s, the stock prices rise steadily. People rush to buy stocks and bonds. Okay, so people are dreaming of getting rich in the stock market. What happens? The stock market crashes. What is known as Black Tuesday, September of 1929, the stock prices peak and then fall. Investors begin selling them all. So on Black Tuesday, the market, the nation's confidence plummets. Shareholders sell their stocks frantically. Millions of shares have no buyers. People who bought on credit left with huge debts, and others lose most of their savings. Okay. you take a look. You can pause the video to check out this newspaper article. Right, erratic wheat prices turn market. Record for all time is set by Wall Street in frenzy of selling. And the main title: Stock Speculators Shaken in Wild Day of Panic. What caused this crash? Overspeculation during the 1920s, the overproduction of goods, buying on margin, uneven distribution of wealth in the 20s, too much borrowing from the banks, and stock prices being grossly inflated without having any real value. And what effects did the Great Crash have? Investors and businesses are losing millions. Thousands of banks fail, and their savings are wiped out. Businesses cut production and they lay off thousands of workers. Unemployment skyrockets, and consumer base drops further. Economic contraction in the U.S. spreads to Europe, and the Great Depression sets in. The final collapse. This is where the banks and the businesses fail. During the Great Depression, the economy plummets and unemployment skyrockets. This lasts until 1940. After the crash, people panic and they take all their money out of the banks, right? They heard that the banks are failing and people are getting laid off, so they're taking all their money out of the bank. As you guys should probably know, for those of you who have debit cards or bank accounts, let's say that you and every member of your family have $100,000 in the bank. And, something happens and you guys all go to the bank and try to get out your $100,000. The bank cannot give you each $100,000 because the bank isn't actually where you keep your money. They don't have hard cash to back up every dollar that they have. That's not how the bank works. Okay, so people are trying to withdraw money from the bank. The bank doesn't have enough money to give everybody their complete savings. And people are losing their money because banks that invested in the stock fail. In 1929 and 1932, the gross national product cut nearly in half, and 90,000 businesses go bankrupt. In 1933, 25% of workers are jobless, and those with jobs get cuts in hours and pay. So, the financial collapse. This shocks the entire world. The Great Depression limits the United States' ability to import European goods. They don't have enough money to produce or buy things in their own country, so now they're going to limit what they can import from other countries. The Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act sets the highest protective tariff ever in the United States. Other countries cannot earn American currency to buy U.S. goods. International trade drops, and unemployment soars around the world. Okay, so these are the effects of the Great Crash. Take a second to kind of check out this chart. Right, we're seeing how it impacts individuals in the U.S., businesses, corporations, and then how overall it impacts the world. Causes of the Great Depression. So here are some factors that led to it. Tariffs, war debts, farm problems, easy credit, and income disparity. The federal government keeps interest rates low and encourages borrowing. That's another reason. Okay, we have the stock market crash, international economic problems, and banking problems. Right, buying on margin and overspeculation influence the stock market crash. High tariffs hurt international trade, and the Federal Reserve fails, and people lose faith in the integrity of the United States banks. So during the Great Depression, Americans do what they have to do in order to survive. If you see on the left, people are living in a tent. People went from owning radios and cars and refrigerators to living in tents. People are losing their jobs and are evicted from their homes. Shanty towns are settlements consisting of shacks, and these arise in cities because people cannot. That's what this image is. That's a shanty town. Because people cannot afford their homes. People dig through the garbage for food, and they beg people for money, any type of food. Soup kitchens offer free or low-cost food. We see bread lines where people line up for food from charities and public agencies. And we're going to see that African Americans and Latinos have higher unemployment rates among their communities and lower pay. Most farmers can grow food for their families in the Great Depression, but about 400,000 farms are lost through foreclosure, and many become tenant farmers. So we're seeing that our farmers, especially, are reverting back to the ways that people operated when, before the Industrial Revolution. The Dust Bowl. Okay. So farmers in the Great Plains exhaust their land through overproduction, and in the 1930s we see a drought. Windstorms hit, and the soil is scattered for hundreds of miles. The Dust Bowl is an area from North Dakota to Texas. This has hit the hardest. Many families migrate to the Pacific Coast states to search for better land to farm. Okay. So effects on the American family. Hardship and the family. Family is a source of strength for most Americans, and some families break apart under the strains of making ends meet here. Many men used to working and supporting their families have difficulty coping with the fact that they can no longer provide for their families. About 300,000 wander the country on railroad boxcars, and there is no federal system of direct relief, cash or food from the government. Right now, you will see that maybe some members of your own family are filing for unemployment so that the government can offer them some relief during this time. This did not exist during the Great Depression, so people are on their own trying to figure out how to survive. Women also struggle to survive. Homemakers budget carefully, and they eat canned food and they sew clothing. Women work outside of the home, and they are resented by unemployed men. And they suffer in silence as they are ashamed to stand in bread lines. In addition to the men and women, the mothers and fathers, children also suffer hardships. They have poor diets, and their health lead to serious problems. There's a lack of tax revenue. This leads to a shortened school year and school closings. Teenagers leave home and they ride trains in search of work and adventure during this time. And everybody in the American family was affected mentally by this time. From 1928 to 1932, the suicide rates rise over 30%. Admissions to state mental hospitals triple, and people give up health care, college, put off marriage and children. And the stigma of poverty does not disappear during this time, despite the fact that everyone is experiencing a level of poverty. Financial security becomes a goal. People are showing kindness to strangers, and they develop a habit of saving and thriftiness. Maybe if some of you have grandparents that lived through the Great Depression, maybe they are really good with budgeting or saving their money, or they are bothered by wastefulness. And this is because they grew up in a time where every morsel of food was valued, and they saved anything that they could. So, let's end there. This is the beginning. We made it through sections 1 and 2. So I will give you worksheet pages to do for that. And then we will pick up with the rest of the Great Depression and probably segue into World War I to move along. But so for today, watch the video I posted in Edmodo, watch this presentation, and then do the assigned worksheets. All right, girls, enjoy the rest of your day.